Shalom Israel. Did you know that the reason for the sudden resurgence, reemergence, reconnection of the Igbos to their ancient Jewish religion is not for the purpose of making Aliyah or migration to Israel? Making Aliyah is described as ascent or going on up. Is a conception in which Igbos and Jews in the diaspora can return or leverage the law of return edict of the state of Israel and then go back Israel as citizens. Now, Igbos are not, returning to their the religion of their ancient fathers or forefathers for this purpose. Igbos are returning to their ancient religion because this is the appropriate time to do that. Because under the sun, there is a time for everything. Now, I'm making this video today to dispel some of the conceptions that have attended the Igbo mass, return from the Christian churches to different, Jewish synagogues and temples. I have been reading a lot of social media posts and opinions, that have been articulated by different people to the effect that the Igbos are attempting to return to Judaism because they want to return to Israel. They want to find an outlet or some kind of loophole. But I do not think the reason why Igbos are returning to their Jewish religion is for that purpose. Igbos want to remain in the same geographical area in the southeast where they are right now. And it seems to me that many Igbos have lost faith in the Christian church because they've been going around in circle, and circumference for many years without any result. And all they have experienced is being pauperized and impoverished by their pastors. Pastors have amassed so much wealth and fleeced their members with erotic and titillating intensity, so that pastors, have cars whose wheelbases are even longer than the square meter of the church in which adherents go to worship. So, and in these churches, people are not allowed to espouse or postulate divergent, dissenting views. The words of the pastor is law. When people go to pastors, they don't develop the competency for skepticism, for scrutiny or Socratic inquiry. They just allow somebody to think for them. I think this is a disservice to the Igbos, and that's one of the reasons they are returning to Judaism, where people can express themselves, where people can leverage on their cognitive acuity, on their metacognitive, skill set, on their and their judgment, on their expertise to be able to make informed decisions about phenomena. In the Christian church, there are some of these counterintuitive dogma and doctrine that are pervasive in the Christian church. For example, one says that if you're struck on the left ear, you should turn to the other ear to be brutalized some more. This is impractical. This is counterintuitive. There is no human being that will stand, dormant and passive to watch another brutalize him. So some of these, some of these conceptions of the Christian, church, have become, have become exposed. To the extent that Igbos are now finding their voices, they are now coming to their senses and knowing that their salvation and their, and their ability to make heaven lies in Judaism, which is, of course, the ancient religion of their fathers. Let me go back to again to the conception of ascent, the conception of making Aliyah. Aliyah is the opportunities accorded to Eastern and Western European Jews who wish to return to Israel to acquire the citizenship, to live, to work, to play there. And then I'm going to make a little distinction here between the word accent and another sounding word accent. They are called homophones, when words sound alike but have different spelling. So let me get my let me get my whiteboard. I've already written some of the words that sound alike. This one is called accent, A-S-C-E-N-T. And this one is also spelled as accent, A-S-S-E-N-T. And this one is accent. So you can see the difference. This one is accent. This one is one related to the making Aliyah. So when you this ascent means to climb, like to climb up to the mountain, to climb to the apex or the apogee of the mountain. So you're making an ascent, you're climbing, going on up, on up. So similarly, in present Israel, people make Aliyah, A-L-I-Y-A-H, Aliyah. So let me try to write it here. Make Aliyah, and then there are some people that I've also seen given the same name as Aliyah. So A-L-I-Y-A-H, that's Aliyah, ascent. So going on up. And then again, during a Shabbat service, the conception of Aliyah also is used when somebody is called onto the bima. The bima is the platform upon which the sacred Torah scroll is positioned. So when somebody makes Aliyah, somebody is being called upon to come to the bima to recite a verse from the sacred scroll. So Aliyah here is to leverage the opportunities afforded by the law of return to return to the state of Israel to acquire its citizenship, and then live, work, and look for opportunities there. So this other ascent is A-S-S-E-N-T. Okay, so that means when a president appends his signature to a law, to a bill, and then makes it become a law. So without the assent of the president or the governor, a bill cannot become a law. So this is assent. When somebody gives a recognition or appends a signature. So you can see the difference. Assent. They all have the same pronunciation, but they have different spellings. They are called homophones. And then this one is accent. Okay, so that is the pronunciation of language. The way people pronounce their language, be it local, national, or or status. So this is accent. The way you pronounce language. Local language or national language, and so on and so forth. So you can see the differences. So, but this is the accent. The number one bullet point is the one. Okay, let me make a bullet point to so bullet point number one, bullet point number two, bullet point number three. So bullet point number one is the one I'm speaking about. It's called accent. This one is accent. Okay, you can see. So this one is making Aliyah to the state of Israel. So let me put my whiteboard down. So you can see that that's not the purpose why Igbos are returning. Igbos are returning for a variety of reasons. They are returning because this is the opportune time to reconnect, to reemerge, with their Jewish religion. I know that I have been making videos, propagating and peddling some of the rites, rituals, routines of Jewish worship. And then, after the botched DNA DNA exercise in Inewi, in which a certain individual proclaimed that Igbos are not, Jews. A lot of Igbos thought that was a challenge, and they started leaving churches in droves, and then going into synagogues and actually setting up synagogues just to prove that they are here to stay in as Jews. I know I've made several videos and I've made references to that particular genetic sampling, and that it was flawed from so many respects. You cannot, the danger of a single story is deep and profound. That's why, scientists, ethnologists, researchers, that's why they use the conception of triangulation, that is using multiple sources of data, multiple sources of information to be able to form a balanced judgment. And then the conception of a DNA at this point is not legally binding, because there is no regulatory agency, be it local, national, or international, that kind of coalesces, condenses, and consolidates all the guidelines into one, so that DNA companies can be able to see a blueprint, or they can be able to see a benchmark from which to articulate DNA work, so that DNA from company A will have the same outcome or result from the same DNA from company B, company C, company D, and so on and so forth. But right now we have a hodgepodge of DNA, outcomes. For example, 3 companies can draw samples from 3 individuals who are related by blood, from the same mother, from the same father, and they want to find out if these 3 individuals or 4 individuals have familial meaning family relationship. But what we have seen increasingly is that the outcomes are different. The DNA company A comes out with an outcome that says, oh well, the genetic marker is 55.5%. DNA company B comes out with another result. Or the genetic marker we found out is that there is a 75.7% chance of being related, and another company comes with 80 points. Not another one comes with 99 points. So you can see 99.9 and so on and so forth. By the way, we've never seen 100% DNA marker resemblance. It's always 99.9% if there is a blood, genotype. If there's a blood relationship. So I've been making that video too. But it's increasingly becoming clear to the whole world that Igbos have a Jewish ancestry. They have a Jewish background. They have a Jewish lineage, and you can see the intense level of mass movement from churches and other religious bodies to synagogues, to Jewish synagogues and temples, and it has become even more intensified with the emergence of Nnamdi Kanu in the state of Israel, at the Wailing Wall. The last time he went to the Wailing Wall and subsequent speeches he's been making, a lot of young Igbos have realized that Judaism is our religion, the religion our forefathers practiced, and now they are moving into Jewish synagogues. So it is not true that they are doing this because they want to migrate to Israel. I know that Igbos are, migrants. They move from place to place in search of opportunity. And you can find them all over the world, even in the most remotest part of the world. You can find them just like the Jews of Eastern and Western Europe. But having said that, I am not saying that any Igbo that wishes to travel to the state of Israel to explore or look for opportunity is being discouraged to do that. But the point I'm trying to make is that I don't want our Anglo-Saxon Jewish brothers to become anxious or become fearful of or reticent about the this mass resurgence of Igbos from Christian churches to Jewish synagogues and temples, because it is not, there's no cause for alarm. They are doing it because they are reconnecting with their Jewish ancestry. They are reconnecting with their Jewish heritage, their Jewish lineage and background. That's all it is. But anywhere you see an Igbo person, please try to embrace that individual. I'm now addressing our Anglo-Saxon Jewish brothers and sisters. Embrace them because they are of the same seed of Israel. They are of the same seed of Abraham. It's just that the color of our skin is a little different. Our forefathers used to have a light complexion when they were in the state of Israel, but as they moved close to the equator, where the sun is intense, that geographical element kind of changed the pigment, the pigmentosis of their skin, and then that's how we turned dark skinned. Not that there is anything about being dark skinned, but it's just to give you a little background about what happened. Yeah, because if you move from back in the day, before even the issue of global warming became a hot button issue. Igbos who lived in ancient Israel were, light complexion with blue eyes, with blonde hair. But as soon as the first and second temples fell, and a lot of people were taken into exile. Igbos, didn't want to be conquered by anybody. They didn't want to be, be subjugated or subjected to the second round of slavery. They decided to make it to the present southeast of Nigeria. Of course, Africa is under the equator. There's intense sunshine. And then, the first and second temple, the first temple fell around 732 BC, before the Common Era. BC, before the Common Era, it used to be called before Christ. But a lot of people took umbrage to the idea of referencing Christ when describing the calendar. So the experts decided to describe it as before the Common Era. So it was the time the first temple fell, and then before then, Israel changed hands, from the Egyptians. The Egyptians ruled, vast areas of land back in the day, from the Middle East to Africa. So the Egyptians ruled, and that's how the Igbos ended up, the Igbo Jews and the Eastern and Western European Jews ended up as slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And then the Israel changed hand again to the Seleucid dynasty of Greece. The Greeks took Israel again, and they ruled it for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And the Romans came and ruled, and then the Arabs ruled, the Babylonians, the Assyrians ruled, and it just changed hands before it got back again into the hands of the Jews. So when I see people claim that the land of Israel belongs to the Arabs, belongs to the Palestinians, they are not, articulating historical facts the way it should be articulated. It's not true. If people are students of history, as a sociocultural, activist, as a sociocultural analyst, and a high priest. I am interacting with text all the time. I'm reading up history. I'm reading the text and the books of Flavius Josephus, the first century Jewish author. That's where you're gonna get a lot of historical content, context of the evolution of Israel. The Egyptians were there, and I'm sure there were other ethnicities that were there that conquered the place before the others, like the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Romans, the Greeks, and so on and so on. So the Jews were already living there. The Jews were already in Israel before these people came and conquered and overpowered them, and then tore down the temples. And of course, the temple is not just a building. Is a place of Jewish life. Is where their culture, their philosophy, their way of life, is embedded. So as soon as the temples fell, there was really nothing to hold up Jewish life. So people started moving, and a lot were carried into captivity. A lot of people were taken into Babylon. A lot of people were taken into Assyria, different parts of Asia Minor as captives. A lot of Jews and a lot of Igbos were also taken into those places. That's why when you go to Babylon, when you go to Iraq or Iran, you're going to see a lot of brown, dark-skinned people. How did they get there? They were our forefathers, our ancestors, who were taken into captivity by those who conquered Israel, at different times. So the idea that people are denouncing and remonstrating against Igbos for returning to their the religion of their forefathers, which is Judaism. And Judaism is not a religion per se; it's a cultural identity. It's a way of life. It's a set of philosophical laws. It's about ethics, ethos of a people. So when you hear Judaism, don't think about Judaism the same way you're going to think about a Christianity, but you got to think about it as a set of philosophies, a set of ethics, ethos, way of life, community, cultural identity. That Igbos, Jews all around the world, have had a significant and overpowering impact in every sphere of life, be it philosophy, be it in the cinemas, be it in banking, be it in publishing, be it in more recently in technology, the Zuckerbergs, Bill Gates, the guy who founded Airbnb. Airbnb is kind of a residential, or it's not a hotel, but it's an accommodation business in which people can rent people's residence for a few days. So they're giving the hotel and tourism businesses a good run for their money. Even Uber, it was a Jewish guy that found the app, and so on and so forth. If you go to the Silicon Valley of California, you're gonna see a lot of Jews doing exceptional, extraordinary things. Coding. They are coding. They are manufacturing apps. They are founding new ways of doing things. Different digital, different technological innovations are springing up in the Silicon Valley of Northern California. In San Jose, in Cupertino, in Sunnyvale, in Mountain View, in all those places. And if you come to Nigeria too, the movie industry in Nigeria has been expanded remarkably by Igbo Jews. Igbos have invested heavily in Nollywood, the Nigerian movie industry, and which has now been adjudged, I believe, the second or the third largest movie industry in the whole world, without the Igbo Jews in Nollywood. And that's what the Nigerian movie industry is referred to as Nollywood. Without the Igbos, the Nollywood industry in Nigeria won't be where it is today. And then when it comes to social media, the Igbos are at the top of their game. Linda Ikeji is one of the foremost and recognizable vlogger in Nigeria. There's another one called Eze. Those are the Igbos who are, trending when it comes to blogging. When it comes to business, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to merchandising, commerce, Igbos are at the top of their game, regardless of the fact that when the Civil War ended in 1970, Igbos were giving only £20 to start life. I remember my father had millions of pounds sterling in banks, in Standard Bank, in Barclays Bank in Aba, because my father was a renowned businessman. So he had a lot of money stashed in the bank, and he lost everything. He was only given £20 to start life, So, but with £20, Igbos were able to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and got back in line. Today they have built business empires. They have built assets for their families. So Igbos have that. Have that staying power, that power of re-emerging, like the phoenix. The phoenix is a bird that was burnt to ashes. From the ashes, it resurrected, and got itself into the committee of nations. So that's the spirit of the Igbo nation. So no, it is not true that they are going back to Judaism because they have any nefarious motive. No, they do not. And I'm not discounting the fact that anybody who wants to go to ancient Israel to explore, to look for opportunity, or to study, cannot do that. I think time is going to come when Igbos are going to be going to Israel to go and study, because Israel has some of the best universities, some of the best institutions in the whole world, especially in terms of technology. And technology is going to be the next wave, of growth. Fossil fuel, and I'm going to make a video about this. Fossil fuel and hydrocarbon and oil and gas is fast becoming a relic of the past. Is fast becoming like a dinosaur. It's going to be extinct very, very soon. And nations who are studying the zeitgeist, the mood of the moment, are making plans to transition to other areas of human endeavor. Norway has a large deposit of its offshore of hydrocarbon. Yet they are now investing in renewable energy. They are investing in cars that don't use cars that non internal combustible engine cars. They are now using cars, hybrid cars, and by 2030 there will be no hybrid cars. There's going to be purely electric cars, because very soon oil prices are going to drop to the point that people who have oil will not start drinking their oil or use it for something else, because the oil will no longer be selling in the international market, because the Western European countries, as well as the Eastern European countries, are racing toward renewable energy. They are racing toward finding alternatives to fossil fuel, finding alternatives to hydrocarbon, to oil and gas. They don't want to deal with oil and gas because it's dirty energy. They're going to be driving their cars with electric energy. They're going to be heating their homes with solar energy. So I am saying to Nigeria to get his house in order before it is too late, because I hear the conversation all the time. We couldn't meet our budget target because the oil of the price of oil and gas dropped. Well, it's going to drop some more, because different countries are going to abandon the use of hydrocarbon, the use of fossil fuel. And this is not a curse, but I'm just saying the truth. I am telling you what is about to happen, that countries are going to rely less on hydrocarbon, on fossil fuel, on oil and gas to drive their economies. They're going to use solar panels. They're going to use alternative source of energy. Tesla, Elon Musk of Tesla is, investing a lot in research and development, so that even airplanes, helicopters are no longer going to be driven with oil and gas. They are going to be driven with alternative energy like solar panels, battery packs. Even big rig trucks, 16-wheelers, are not going to be relying on petrol or diesel to be able to make their runs. So this is a very important matter that Nigeria needs to be cognizant about, and stop talking about budget. There's a budget shortfall because oil prices fell. It's gonna fall. It's gonna fall some more because the West is busy. Even some Arab countries like Dubai, you can see Dubai is driving its economy based on tourism. They are building those skyscrapers, turning the water into land, where real estate, very expensive real estate is being built. A lot of Nigerians are going to Dubai to shop, going to Dubai for this and that. It's their fossil fuel, is the hydrocarbon resources that are transforming their country, because they have foresight. They are thinking ahead. They are progressive in their mindset. They are progressive in their antithesis and synthesis of phenomena. Whereas other countries are still very conservative. They are not looking ahead, that the evil day is already around the corner. And I am not a prophet of doom, but I'm just speaking the truth as a sociocultural analyst. I am an empiricist. I believe in empirical evidence. I'm not just peddling and parading and propagating things that cannot be empirically verified. Empiricism is something that can be verified or falsified through the senses. So that's what I am doing. You can always go look it up. The times are changing and things are moving very fast, that countries that are going to rely on fossil fuel and on hydrocarbon, on oil and gas, are going to be left behind. So the intellectual resources, the mental capacity of citizens will be the critical resources that will drive economies in the next few years. It's not about how much resources that you have on the ground or that you have in the mountains that will drive the next phase of growth in nations. We have seen that in China. China does not have a hydrocarbon or fossil fuel or oil and gas, but you can see the kind of intellectual drive that is going on in China. They are producing all kinds of technological and digital resources. The same thing with Japan. The same thing with Singapore. The same thing with Indonesia, Malaysia. These are countries that have little natural resources, but their economies are being driven at a very high pace because they are leveraging on their human capital. Human capital is what is going to drive the next phase of development in nations, not your natural resources. Natural resources are important, but oil and gas, fossil fuel, hydrocarbon will become a thing of the past. The gold in Botswana and the diamond in Botswana, the gold in South Africa and elsewhere will still be very critical, because people will always people have an intimate relationship with gold and diamond, but fossil fuel does not have a long shelf life. It's gonna first of all, it's gonna run out, and second of all, people are finding alternative means of driving their economies. So this is a free advice to nations that continue to rely on fossil fuel, on oil and gas, on hydrocarbon, to begin to think outside the box. In order to be able to drive the economy in the years ahead, it's not going to take too long before the reality will set in. Now, I'm gonna say this: the videos I've been making are not just for Igbos. As a matter of fact, it's less for the Igbos, but for our neighbors, for non-Igbos, for the Yorubas, for the Hausas, for the other ethnicities. Uh, these videos will help you have a better understanding about Igbos, because there's a lot of misconception. There's a lot of mendacity and lies that are being peddled about the Igbos. And I have looked around, and there is really no Igbo intellectual coming out to dispel some of these lies, some of these rumors about Igbo cultural identity, about Igbo cultural thinking, about Igbo cultural thoughts, about Igbo philosophy. So I thought these videos will help clarify some of the gray area that have persisted in the minds of our neighbors who don't know much about the Igbos. People don't have time to go and read books, but they can click on a video and watch it for 30 minutes, for 35 minutes, or 40 minutes, and get critical information that can help them begin to have a rethink, begin to have a different perception about the Igbos. So that's one of the reasons I'm making these videos. It's not about religion, it's not about statehood, it's not about segregation, but it's about Igbo identity. It's about dispelling and resolving some of the misconceptions, some of the mendacity, some of the lies, some of the negative perceptions that have been peddled against the Igbos. These videos are not meant to remonstrate against anybody or to disrespect or denounce anybody, but to set the record straight, so that people can begin to access information about the Igbos. I have a lot of friends, a lot of my friends, I thought I have more friends who are Muslims than even Igbos. Believe you me, because my friends who are Muslims are very positive thinking, very educated people. They are very loving. I have a friend of mine who comes to visit me. He's if I do have a problem in Nigeria, he helps me resolve it. We've been friends for over 30 years. It's not true that Igbos are tribalist, or Igbos don't like the rest of Nigeria. Because as a sociocultural critic, I read a lot of things on social media. Igbos, they are loving people. They love their neighbors. They love everybody. That's why Igbos will leave their villages and towns and go and settle in all corners of the world and get along with those people. And I saw Igbos during this last Christmas in Kaduna, the state of Kaduna, going to pay homage to the state governor and declaring their solidarity and support and loyalty to the state government. I didn't see other ethnic groups do that, but I did see Igbos on TV. So that shows, love. That shows love. Igbos have for different ethnicities. You see them in Sokoto State, see them in Yobe State. If you see them even in Maiduguri, where there is a Boko Haram, where there is a lot of that's where you find the flashpoint of Boko Haram, where they are more active. Igbos are still there, helping the local community, paying their taxes, ensuring that they live in harmony with their neighbors. So Igbos are not, tribalists. They are not ethnic jingoists. They are broad-minded people. It was Nnamdi Azikiwe, the first president, before then the Governor General of Nigeria, that articulated policies and edicts that unified Nigeria, and then the General Aguiyi Ironsi, the first military head of state of Nigeria, articulated a unity degree for which he paid with his life to unite Nigeria, to make sure that Nigeria becomes one nation, a nation of that has love for one another. Whereas the others are crafting policies that tend to separate and divide. Policies that speak of you have heard about the conception of all politics is local. So they are leveraging on all politics is local to only craft policies that will benefit their own ethnic groups. But Igbos don't do that. And I know there's an Igbo guy I've been interacting with on social media who warned me over the idea of referring to Jewish synagogue as Igbo Jewish synagogue, because he's going to portray Igbos as a tribalist, and ethnic jingoist. And I tried to reason with him. I understood his point of view, but a Jewish synagogue is different. A Jewish synagogue is for Igbos. It's not for any other tribe, even though other tribes might come there to seek the face of God and get their blessing. But that synagogue is for the Igbos. That's why it's important to make that distinction. It's called a Jewish Igbo Jewish synagogue. It's good to place the syntax in order. Jewish Igbo synagogue. If you just call it a Jewish synagogue, there could be a lot of confusion. There is a lot of religious entities that are named synagogues. Synagogue of this, synagogue of all nations, synagogue of this, synagogue. These are Christian churches. These are not Jewish temples or Jewish spheres and spaces of worship. These are all Christian organizations, Christian spaces of worship. Now, if we don't make that distinction, if we don't clarify which is which, people might be confused. So it's important to understand that where the Igbos worship is called Igbo Jewish synagogue. But that does not negate the fact that is a place that has a universal, that promotes a universal access. Is a place that encourages neighbors to, come and worship and seek the face of God. But that does not entitle them to anything. That does not give them rights, responsibilities or privileges of Igbo Jews. Only the Igbos are Jews, and no one else is Jewish in Nigeria. Only the Igbos since the beginning of time. Now, if you like my videos, I want you to go and press the red rectangular button on the bottom left corner of your screen. The system is going to automatically subscribe you, so that every time I release a video, you'll be the first to receive that video. It does not cost you anything. It's not being monetized. Subscription is a misnomer. I wish they would have referred to it as something else, because it's kind of threatening to people when you ask them to subscribe. But subscription is gonna get my videos faster to you, so that every time I make a video, you'll be the first to receive them, to receive my videos. Until I come your way again, this is your messianic. No, not messianic. This is your high priest, Igbo Jewish high priest, bringing you words of encouragement, words of knowledge. I'm bringing you my experiential knowledge about phenomena. Thank you very much.